Hello again. We are live once again. I'm John Looney. I'm running for House District 81 here in Lewis Clark County. And with me today is my good friend Audrey. I'm going to let her introduce herself and then I get to ask the first question.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay.
I'm Audrey Walliser. I live in Broadwater County. So that's what
We need to know. Come on. You're going to have to tell people who you are.
Okay, fair enough.
I understand that a lot of people know who you are.
I'm kind of notorious.
You are.
Which is a blessing and a curse. So no, I've been around the Montana political scene for almost 30 years now. I was doing that math the other day. It's a long time. In various capacities, did 2 terms as a YR chair, worked on a number of campaigns, everything from city and local stuff all the way up to presidential races, write a lot of policy stuff. So I kind of have my fingers in a lot of stuff. Been a candidate.
And people pull up their boots when they see you walk into the Capitol, or
it's kind of like the parting, like Moses and the parting of the Red Sea. Like, I think that's more what it's like. Ooh, why is she here? I get a lot of that of why are you here? And I'm like, did you do something wrong? There's a lot of guilty conscience stuff that goes into that.
It's like when I walk through Walmart and people are diving out of the aisles to avoid because they see their bondsman coming down there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. I'm not that girl. Like, I think it's just the whole thing of, like, usually when I come up there, it's not just for a great lunch or to hang out in the rotunda. Like, I try to do stuff that I try not to participate in ridiculousness. So if I'm there, there's a reason for that.
So I have a question for you.
Okay.
Well, a reiteration.
Okay.
You gave us a class.
I did.
And in that class, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were talking about first-time legislators and what it's like when they get into the legislation, and they realize that they can't hit the ground running as hard and as fast as they want to.
Absolutely.
So explain that in the terms that you explained it in that class.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the largest misnomers for first-time legislators is that when you run, obviously you're running on, I'm going to make all these changes and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to do all this stuff and I'm going to hit it super, super hard. But what a lot of young legislators don't understand is that there's processes even within that legislature. There's caucus, there's seniority, there's caucus, priorities. And what you ran on may not fall within that. Not only that, as a freshman legislator, a lot of them don't have the experience that some of us do. I mean, I worked in the session for 7 terms as staff. And so I understand a little bit of the nuances of how that goes into it. So it's really difficult if you just come in, you don't understand. You're drinking so much information. I heard a legislator one time say, it's like trying to drink through a fire hose. And that's a really good analogy. But I think for a lot of freshman legislators, there's this harsh reality that I ran on XYZ, and when you get through that first legislative session, you did none of those things. And so there's this huge disconnect with that. And so I always caution people, and like in the classes I teach, that you've kind of got to temper your expectations and manage your expectations and understand who you're working with and what that looks like, because if not, that first legislative session is going to be incredibly hard.
So what would you say to somebody like me that has spent a couple of sessions up there arguing, passing bills, getting bills vetoed, my bills getting vetoed? Right. I have friends. I think that I can go up there and I can make a difference right off the bat. I am going in there loaded for bear. I have bills in my back pocket. I want to change some things.
Absolutely.
Same advice?
Meanwhile, here in the real world.
Meanwhile, here in the real world.
That's not how that's going to work.
All right, you're saying I have to have expectations.
I think you absolutely have to have expectations. I mean, a lot of that, what a lot of people don't understand is that the Montana legislature for 2027 is being decided right now. It's not going to be decided in November. It's going to be decided now. It's going to be decided in those interim committees. It's going to be decided in who's elected leadership. And those posturings and those decisions are preemptively being made right now. And so if you're a freshman legislator, you've got an advantage because you have been up there. You have kind of worked your way through the process. But the reality, unfortunately, is you're still going to be a freshman at the end of the day.
I don't know that I have an advantage. Because I tell people, they're like, well, you know a lot of people. Well, I know them because I'm standing up there, testifying in front of them all the time. That doesn't mean I know them. I'm still not a policymaker.
Right.
All I am is a citizen that's coming up and lobbying on behalf of whatever I'm up there to lobby for or against or whatever it is. Um, a lot of judicial stuff, a lot of homeschool stuff. Uh, I think it was very valuable, that discussion, and I think it opened eyes, and it may have scared a few legislators or candidates who, you go into it with dreams. And my stump speech is always, listen, I'm tired of spending 3 minutes in a committee room. I want a seat at the table because I have stuff to say, and I get tired of going into a committee room, filling a committee room with 300 years of experience in whatever business or whatever we're talking about that day, and listening to all the opponents and proponents and informational witnesses, and then it comes time for questions, and not a single legislator pushes the button and asks a question. Why would you not, if you have the opportunity to talk to 300 years of experience, why would you not ask a question?
Well, I think part of that is did that person who was testifying say that they would stand for question? Because it's really hard for a legislator to say, hey, you that just testified, and to kind of pick on them, right? Like, so there's a lot to be said about how citizens are lobbying. And we talk about this in a different one of my classes, and about making sure that you present testimony, that you make yourself open to answer those questions and those types of things. So that's problem number one. Problem number two, though, is that, and I'm going to say this, and this is going to make me the most unpopular girl at the prom again, but a lot of those decisions are already made before the committee hearing. Those decisions are made because it's based on caucus priority, it's based on party priority, it's based on all that. So you go through the process because you have to, but a lot of those bills are decided long before they go to committee.
So I know you want to get to the fire stuff.
It's my topic this week.
But I'm a young 14, 15-year-old student that is interested in getting in politics.
Absolutely.
And I want to learn as much as possible about how to get through the process, how things work. How do I distinguish what I'm told and what reality is?
That is such a great question, because I think that when you're that age, and my son is 18, and so this last legislative session, he testified on his very first bill, and it was super fun to follow up behind him because people are like, is that your kid? Yeah, it's my kid. And he grew up in the Capitol, right? So like a lot of people knew who he was, but he actually got to testify on his first bill this year. So it was super fun to watch. But I've heard that from people, like kids that are sitting in my living room going, gosh, you've been to Washington, D.C. and testified before congressional committees, and like, I just don't know who to believe and what to believe. And I always tell people, I said, I don't care if you're 15 or 115, the rules are still the same. Trust but verify. Like, and make sure that when you're getting information, that you're getting it substantiated from several sources, not just, hey, I saw it on Facebook, or I saw it on TikTok, or I saw it wherever. There is nothing wrong with doing your own research on a topic that you're passionate about, right? And if it's something that you care about, know that topic inside and out. I think the biggest issue, especially with freshman legislators, is that we have to know everything about everything. No, you don't have to know everything. And we talked about this in my class too. Having that Rolodex of experts that you can go, hey, if I get a bail bonds or I got a judicial bill, I'm calling John because he's my guy. I don't know anything about it. Or if I have questions on homeschooling, I'm going to go to this person. You don't have to be an expert on everything, but be an expert on one thing, the one thing that you're the most passionate about, and just keep that Rolodex or have that list of people that you can refer to. Same way when you're 14 or 15 or 16 years old, is who do you trust? Was it your mom and dad? Is it your pastor? Is it your teacher? Is it, a person you met through Boy Scouts or 4-H or whatever? Having those contacts are really important, because they're not going to maybe give you the straightforward answer. I know even with my son, he goes, well, what about this? And I'm like, well, where did you look? Like,
that's what I tell I find myself telling my son all the time. You know what? There's a computer sitting right over there on that desk. I've taught you how to research. why don't you go find the answer and come back and tell me what the answer is?
So I'm so old school. I still have a set of those encyclopedia.
The book.
And so I always tell him, I said, you could use that little thing in your hand. You could use the desktop. You could use the laptop, or you could do it how I started. And we were going through these things called microfilm and a Dewey Decimal System and an encyclopedia. So you take your choice. And I'm not saying that I love making kids go through microfilm because I think they find some really cool stuff in there. But it's just being willing to do the research and being open-minded enough to be like, hey, I might be wrong about this. I find all the time that it may be something that I really truly am like, oh, I believe this. And I'm like, ooh, but this person who I trust or this person who knows more about this topic says, I might not be right. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to accept the fact that you're not always going to be right.
So I'm not, I will tell my kids that I'm always right.
That's every parent's thing. Like,
But
you're always right.
I will tell you that making them go do the research has enlightened me, probably not as many times as I've been right, but my daughter wants to go fishing on Sunday and says, she's getting herself ready to go. And I'm like, where are you going? She's like, I'm going fishing. I said, you can't go fishing. Who are you going with? She's like, by myself. And I said, you can't fish by yourself. That's a Montana law. I'm pretty sure there's a Montana law that says single girls can't fish without an escort on Sundays. And she came unglued. And she went and did the research and came back and showed me. She's like, this started as a rumor on a radio show 40 years ago. But if you look it up, I can type that into Google, and you know what Google's going to say? It's going to say, that's a law that was on the books in Montana. If you don't know how to go past that research and actually dig into something, she'd have come back and said, I guess I'm not going fishing. But no, she went and she had the whole history. She knew the radio show, the host, and how the whole thing started. So, but that's funny. So we'll get off the...
No, I think that's great. I think that, kind of to kind of circle back your point, it's all about research. It's all about just getting those kids set up for success. I think the other thing that we do very poorly in Montana is that we don't mentor our young. We don't, and I saw that years ago, even as a YR chair, is that we eat our own. And I would love to see us develop our youth a lot better than we have. We don't have those opportunities that we really need to develop the young people in our state.
So that brings up a good topic. We're going to sign it. I promise we'll get to the fires and the smoke and the hell decision.
And the hell decision.
So now I lost my whole train of thought.
Yeah. So we were back on developing the youth of Montana.
Why, young Republicans.
Yeah.
How do what was our voter turnout for primaries? 34%?
Yeah, 33, 34%, even less in some counties.
What was it in Hazard County? I mean, Broadwater County.
Yeah, it was a little less.
A little less than that? So how do we get young people involved and not alienate them? Here's what I see. When I go to a Central Committee hearing or meeting or a Young Republicans meeting or any of the Patriot meetings, Women's Republic, all of these groups, there's two very distinct age ranges. There's 60 and above and 25 and below. And you see the 25 and below one, maybe twice, and then they vanish. Why do they vanish?
Because when you think about that age bracket, think about where you were when you were that age. You're building a family. You're trying to build a career. You're trying to build financial security for both of those. And your ability to engage is a lot different at 25 than it is at 45, 55, or 65, right? And so we don't develop those opportunities for those 20 to 25-year-olds who may be recently married or just starting families and all that, because if you can't make it in person to our central committee at 7 o'clock on Tuesday night, you're not part of our central committee. That doesn't work. I mean, I think about it when I was 25. I was like, I had kiddos and like 7 o'clock was bedtime and I'm bathing kids and I'm putting them to bed. There was no way I was going to be able to drive 25 miles or drive 10 miles or drive 3 miles down to a central committee meeting when I got littles and I'm trying to get ready for bed and read them a story and make sure everything's ready. And I think about it even, at 35, then my kids were a little bit older and yeah, they were more self-sufficient, but I've got homework and I'm trying to find cheerleading pom-poms and I'm trying to find football gear and all of the things, right? Now, the greatest blessing of COVID is it taught us how to connect and how it taught us how to unite without having to be in person. And I think one of the things that we don't do enough of, especially post-COVID, is we don't use those resources to engage those younger people. And my heart goes out because I think moms who have kiddos are like the best people to get things done. You want a thing done, give it to a mom who's got a baby in one arm and she's like making a grocery list. Like those are the people who get things done. We just know how to take care of stuff. We get it off the to-do.
I'm not ignoring you. I am also running a business at the same time.
Exactly, but that's just it, is that you can sit here and do this and run your business on your phone. That's exactly my point. Thank you for making my point.
You're welcome. Let's talk about fires.
Ooh, okay, let's talk about fire.
Why are you the person to talk to about fire?
Why am I the person to talk to about fires? 28-year fire career. I spent 20 years on the federal side, worked for the state. Fire's been my thing for a long time. It's really interesting to have this conversation at a fair because my backstory to that is my dad was an aviation guy at the jump base in Missoula. I grew up around fire. So fire, forestry, all that kind of stuff is huge. I grew up in Northwest Montana. And growing up in Northwest Montana, we went from having every town having 4 or 5 mills to having none. When I grew up, Highway 93 was log truck, chip truck, wood products truck. So whether that was 2x4s, flatwood, whatever it was. By the time I left home and graduated, that had completely changed. And that had to do with policy. That had to do with really bad things. And I went, when I graduated, I'm like, I'm going to be a timber sales forester. And I remember my high school guidance counselor going, don't be doing that. Don't be doing that. And I was like, why? Like, I think this is the coolest job ever. I get to hike and I'm going to put little blue, things around a tree and we're going to cut them down. And he's just like, that's not going to be a job in 10 years. And I went, what? And I didn't believe it. So I kind of got taken back by that. And growing up around it, I went into fire because it was kind of just the transition. And so I've seen it firsthand. I've been there, fought fire, grew up around timber, grew up around really bad policy and things like the Equal Access to Justice and the Wilderness Act and all of that kind of stuff. And so when I think about fair, I think about, growing up in 4-H and FFA. And I was kind of an anomaly. Like I still had my market livestock project, but my big project in 4-H for the 10 years I was in it was forestry. And in 1998, I won a national project award for a 10-year study I did on the effects of fire in Yellowstone National Park. And then also a private investigation I did of the Storm King Mountain tragedy, which we killed a number of firefighters on in Colorado in the 90s. And so it's always like fair kind of always brings that back. It always kind of brings me back to that. And so I always laugh and tell people that you never can get away from it, but it's just a huge part of who I am. And so as my career has progressed, I always like, I'm going to get away from fire policy and I'm going to do big girl things. And it always comes back to I'm doing timber and fire policy because a lot of those guys are gone. Let's be honest. A lot of those timber guys have passed away, have moved on, are in their 70s and 80s, and they're tired of fighting because they've been fighting for decades and nothing has changed. And now we just burn timber, we don't cut it. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
So when you say we just burn timber, we don't cut it.
Yep.
I'm a layman. I know nothing about forestry.
Yeah.
I know nothing about timber.
Yeah.
Explain to me what the problem is in Montana. In less than a
6-hour documentary.
I don't need an 8-hour course. I just want the help me understand.
So we have to go to understand. We've got to go back to at least the mid 90s, and we need to look at the Clinton administration and the wilderness policy. We decided then that the Equal Access to Justice Act and empowering environmental groups was a priority in our country. And we turned a lot of timberland into wilderness. Wilderness means no motorization, no mechanism, no nothing. And so we locked a lot of this out, which in turn meant that if we didn't have timber to cut, our mills went by the wayside, and we kept pouring on these environmental regulations. So we lost our mills. We lost our mills. We lost our good paying jobs. We stopped managing our forest. There was years and years and years of bad policy. And now we're in a position where Our timber's not worth as much. We have no mills. If you wanted to do pulpwood or like paperwood, it used to be you could send it to Frenchtown. Now the closest mill is in the Tri-Cities or Rapid City, South Dakota. Timber companies are not interested in Montana timber and Montana mills anymore because it's not cost effective. There's no guarantee that they would get it. We have more board feet tied up in litigation than we have that we're actually cutting. So it's just been years and years and years of bad policy. Well, couple that with fire, and as much as we want to talk about it, I mean, lightning happens, it's a natural occurrence, but a lot of our fires are man-made because the people have moved into the timber, people want to recreate on public lands, all those kinds of things. And so now we have this huge fire issue, and fire is big business. Fire is a huge problem policy-wise, it's a huge problem economic-wise, it's a huge problem health-wise. And so it just kind of keeps collapsing on itself. We've had lots of people try to address it. And fundamentally, at the end of the day, it's bad policy coupled on bad policy on bad policy. And nobody wants to address that because we would have to dig down to the core of that and we would have to start over. And that is really uncomfortable for a lot of people, because we'd rather sit there and go, it's Democrats' fault, it's Republicans' fault, it's environmentalists' fault, rather than just saying, okay, you don't like smoke in the air? Here's what we got to do to change that. And that is the hard part, is that nobody wants to have those conversations.
Do you think that translates into a lot of different
absolutely.
areas?
Absolutely. It's not just fire, it's not just timber. You can see that across several industries.
So, just a timber question. I was always told that the timber industry creates better forests. They manage forests better than wild fish and game or whoever.
Right.
When you said the quality of timber, are we not, let's say tomorrow we open up 10 mills. Is our timber a different quality than Alberta's timber, where they've managed timber and grown?
Yes. Yes, it is. I mean, our forests are not what they were in the 90s. We don't have high quality timber because it's the survival of the fittest, right? It's no different. Like, the easiest solution is if you put a bunch of seeds in a pot, right? They compete for food, water, sunlight, and all that. Trees come from seeds, and it's the same kind of thing. As we're not going in there and we're not pulling out these trees, and we're not allowing these trees to grow and be, good quality and things like that. So we've done this for now 30 years. And if you walk into our forest, there's a lot of them that are so overgrown. We've got blowdown, we've got all of that. We have species of trees in Montana that need to be harvested routinely. And it's just not happening. So our timber quality is not as good as it was. There used to be a point in time where timber pretty much paid for our school systems in Montana. It was the number one economic driver of the land board to pay for our schools. It's not that way anymore.
Why are the environmentalists, I know you said not to, it's everybody's fault, but it's like fish and game and hunters managing wildlife. Why are we not looking to the experts, the timbers people, to manage that? I think and correct me if I'm wrong, we have more timber, more trees than we did 100 years ago.
Right.
So the argument that we're destroying the ozone and we don't have enough trees to replenish oxygen, that doesn't exist.
No, trees are a renewable resource.
So why do we not manage a renewable resource?
Because it's ugly. Because when you look at what people want to spin, they want to spin it as the 5-second but ugliest clear cut that they've ever seen. And we've completely raped the ground. And that's what we want to talk about, right? We don't want to talk about reforestation. We don't want to talk about managing timber like a resource, like growing it and developing it. We want to talk about the ugly side of it. It is easier, and this is interesting because when you bring this up, I'm gonna tie this into a modern day issue that a lot of people are talking about right now. We want to talk about speculation, but we won't want to talk about facts. Here's an interesting fact. The same exact groups who are against data centers are the same exact groups who push to get rid of the timber industry in Montana. Coincidence? I think not.
Do you want to get into the data center
No,
conversation?
I'm just, it's
No,
an interesting conversation.
it-
And it's interesting when and that's, data centers are one of those things that I think a lot of people, it's kind of the issue of the day. But it's interesting to me, and I haven't really spent a whole lot of time going down the rabbit hole of data centers, but it's interesting to me when I see the people and the organizations that are against it, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. So are we not fighting timber sales now? Like, oh, you're going to focus on data centers? Let me go cut some trees. But it's interesting it's the same groups. And it's interesting now as an adult to sit and watch what they're saying about data centers is the exact same verbiage. If you looked at a anti-timber ad from 1994 and you look at an anti-data center ad, minus the fact that they're a little bit different now because of AI and graphics, the verbiage is exactly the same.
Huh.
And so I think that's an interesting situation where, again, going back to the research thing of what's actually going on? Because again, truth and disclosure, I haven't spent enough time going down the rabbit hole of data centers and doing that research. But my spidey sense goes off when people who I've been actively working against for years now all of a sudden go, ooh, bright new shiny thing, it's going to be data centers. And that is concerning to me because we've empowered people, and I've seen a lot of the rhetoric around data centers, and it's like, okay, where is that information coming from? And when I try to fact check that and go, okay, show me this, I can't fact check it. And that is really hard for me to, I can provide, if you tell me I hate clear cutting or I hate this, I can give you a stack of documents this tall that says this is why we clear cut this species, this is why we manage this way, and here's 100 studies from 100 different universities and plots and all this kind of stuff. But I can't find that for your data center information. So it's interesting to me that I feel like we're repeating the cycle without giving an affirmative answer, right? And so my fear is that now we're taking this environmental cause and we're focusing on data centers being this environmental travesty when we don't have the documentation and the information to back it up. So now we can't have this. We can't cut a tree. We can't mine. We can't log. We can't. So what are we turning Montana into? We're turning Montana into a tourist destination like an episode of Yellowstone. That's what we're turning Montana into.
but I love that Yellowstone.
Well, I'm glad you do. I'm glad somebody
No.
does.
I was in DC November. I was coming back from DC, and I had a layover in Minnesota. And when I got on the plane and was flying into Bozeman, every screen in front of me had an episode of Yellowstone going. Every single screen.
As somebody who grew up in Western Montana, about 55 miles from where that was shot, I'm just like, the geography alone, like the geography of what they talk about in that show alone drives me crazy. But it's just like, I was in a restaurant here a few months ago, and there was a bunch of the livestock, brand inspectors there. And I'm like, I was texting a friend of mine from out of state, and I was like, see, the livestock agents in Montana really don't look like the guys from Yellowstone. So it was, but no, it's a huge misconception. It's a huge misnomer. But that is what is driving the economic drivers of Montana. We're not looking at long-term investment. We're looking at what is the get rich quick.
So are we going to have to write a bill to change the treasure state into a different?
Yeah, it's going to have to be the tourism state.
The tourism state?
Because what are we?
The destination state.
Yeah. What treasures are we actually developing in Montana right now? We're exporting our kids because they can't afford to live here. We're exporting people who are generational, who grew up here, have lived here, lived off the land. They're moving, selling out because they can't afford to live here. We don't log. We barely mine. We barely. What treasures are we developing? And this is why I will never run for the legislature, because I would ask these questions on the floor.
Back to fires for a second.
Yeah.
So when I was growing up, I grew up in Bab. There was I remember the mini glacier fire.
Absolutely.
And it came over, and I watched it jump St. Mary's Lake. Coolest thing I've ever seen. Is it because this is your study? Does fire build better forests than clear cutting and replanting?
Depends on the species of trees. Depends on the vegetation. I mean, there's a lot of factors for that. Here's the thing, though. Fires don't burn with the intensity that they do now when you manage forest. They're not the mega fires that we're seeing today. When we logged, even in the 80s, when we logged, we still had fire. We have always had fire. Fire plays an intricate role in the ecosystems of forests. Will not disagree with that. But we don't see the mass devastation that we do now.
So now we're going to get into some science, because
Oh.
I know you have it. In order, different species,
Right.
but in order for a pine tree, for that seed to come out of a cone
Right.
and germinate and go into the ground, is it require fire?
Ponderosa's, yeah. I mean, you basically cook the cone and it explodes and the seed goes into the ground.
So when you talk about intensity, what you're saying is that happens, but it continues to burn and you lose.
There's a huge difference between a fire that will cause a pine cone to explode and nuking something and making it look like the surface of the moon.
There's a lot of not clear cuts, but clear areas where fire's burned and it's never, nothing's come back.
Yeah, absolutely. And that has to do with fire intensity. That has to do with the down, the litter, and all that kind of stuff, the significance of what was there. And if you look at a fire that's gone through an area that's been managed, it doesn't look like that. Yeah, you're going to have those pine cones that exploded because you're going to have a hotter temperature because it's a ground fire and you're not in the trees and it's not nuking it. There's a huge difference. I'm not anti-fire. I'm just against the intensity of these mega fires that we have because we're not managing it at all.
And I'm not saying you were. I was genuine.
Yeah,
it was genuine
absolutely.
curiosity. Just because, growing up, you hear,
Absolutely.
yeah, and you learn stuff in school, and fire was always a good thing for forests. But now, when you have a forest that's been mismanaged and there's clear cut, or there's not clear cut, but blow down underneath it, and you can't walk. There's areas where I used to hunt that you can't walk through anymore.
Absolutely.
Because it's just, there's no way through it.
Absolutely.
You cannot, you have to climb or crawl or, so not only does it affect our forests, but now those herds that used to come through that area can't get through there anymore.
And those beautiful meadows that those elk would eat in and relax in and that you're sitting there going, hey, I know when I come up here this fall that these elk are going to be, wintering here, and they're not there anymore because they're gone.
Do you want to talk about held?
Yeah, we'll talk about held.
It's all Canada's fault that we're getting the smoke in Montana. And our kids are unhealthy because of the smoke.
Uh-huh.
Educate me.
Well, first of all, the concept that Canada smoke is coming down into Montana right now isn't true. The smoke we have in Montana right now is from Washington, Oregon, and Idaho. That if you look at a jet stream, it's kind of pushing up that way. So that's number one. Here's the other thing. Our smoke is sort of kind of infiltrating Alberta and BC right now just because of the jet stream. So all the screaming on the East Coast, all of that smoke coming from Canada is true. Absolutely, it's true. But it's interesting to me that we as Montanans, we inhale smoke every year. July to September, we're inhaling smoke. Nobody says anything. But we inconvenience somebody on the east side of the big river, and it becomes a major political discussion. So that's the first thing I think is really interesting, that we don't apply the same rule of law across the board to all states. Here's the other thing. Arizona, New Mexico, they've been on fire. Well, that smoke's kind of sort of went south. So does Mexico get to send us a bill now too? I mean, I know we're not agreeing on the trade agreement, but I don't think smoke's part of the trade agreement. Just saying. And so it's interesting. I'm really frustrated right now with the conversation about this smoke in Canada for a couple of reasons. Number one, Canada has consistently helped us out with fire for many years. They were the source of where they got the water scoopers, right? Before Bridger Aerospace kind of came on to play. A lot of the water scoopers that we used for fire for years, especially in our part of the world in Northwest Montana, were Canadian. And they make them. They're built there. Before Bridger Aerospace kind of came onto the scene of that. So Canada and America and even Mexico have had working agreements with fire resources for decades. That's not new. And so when people are like, nobody's helping Canada. Yes, we're helping Canada. And Canada won't pay for firefighters. There's a whole agreement. You can go look it up. It's been in place for years. The other thing I think is interesting is that we keep talking about, well, there's smoke and it's hurting people and it's affecting people. Absolutely. Smoke's not good for you. I'm not going to argue that. I always laugh and tell people I never smoked a cigarette a day in my life, but smoked at least one forest summer for 30 years of my life because that's my job, right? But it's interesting because we want to have these conversations about how bad Canada is managing their forests. Now, I'm a firm believer that you shouldn't cast stones in a glass house. So, do I support all of Canada's management policies? No. Do I support all of America's management policies? No. But here's some interesting facts. Canada is the #1 exporter of timber. Okay, so to export timber, that means you have to cut the tree, you have to process the tree, you have to put it in a little package and send it somewhere. So that's #1. #2, 30% of the timber that we use in the US for our construction, for our timber needs, comes from Canada. So, if we want to have a conversation about why we're using Canadian timber and not our own, that kind of goes back to what we're talking about with mills and our timber and all that quality. Absolutely. But if Canada is able to do that and 30% of our timber comes from Canada, shouldn't we be having the conversation about why we're not using American timber and not necessarily pointing fingers at Canada? Do I think anybody has the land management policy figured out? No. Also, remember, Canada's structure of government is not ours. And I kind of tend to be a constitutionalist, and I go, that's Canada. We're America. Let's not be casting stones in a glass house when we need to clean up our own mess first.
If you had a magic wand,
Ooh.
you could fix the timber industry
Yeah.
with the wave of a wand. How do we do it?
We have to address the Equal Access to Justice Act. It's the #1 first thing we need to do. We need to stop rewarding environmentalists for obstructing timber sales. #1. #2, we have got to provide infrastructure for mills and wood processing to come back. #3 is we have to do a better job of environmental education to the public. I think that the problem is, and again, tying this back to data centers, we have these devices that we hold in our hands and there's instant access to information, good, bad, or indifferent. And if we don't do a better job of educating the public, the battle's lost long before we get there. Those are the 3 things we have to face.
What senators and legislators are the biggest proponents of timber? I think I have one in mind.
You know, we used to have some really good timber people in our legislature, but a lot of that's kind of gone by the wayside.
I'm thinking Libby area.
Oh, yeah.
Gunderson.
Gunderson's good. Yeah, Gunderson's old school. You know, Libby's always cranked out some
Millette.
good. Yeah. You know, I think we have them. The problem is, though, again, what's the priority of the session?
Well, I'm going to go in there, guns blazing. I've got bills in my back pocket. I'm going to make the changes, Audrey.
Okay.
I'm gonna rally those guys, and we're gonna wave your magic wand.
I think that'd be great. I'll sit in the balcony and watch.
How long have we gone? Too long? All right. Producer's getting upset.
I know.
If she had a microphone, she'd be yelling at us in our. That's why I turned so I couldn't. But I appreciate you coming down and talking to us. How do we get more people down to the fair?
You know, I think people just come on down and enjoy it. It's free to come in, and I think that, you know, you want to experience true Montana, come down to the fair. There's all these, you know, these 4-H kids that spent years working on these projects. There's some great vendors here. Come on down and get involved in your community.
My favorite thing to do at the fair is when they do the indoor project auctions. I used to go to the livestock auctions all the time, but then I end up buying more meat and more pigs than I really want to.
And you don't have a big enough freezer. I'm totally tracking.
Because I want to support the kids.
Absolutely.
And then, there's another kid I know. I know that kid's parents.
$30,000 later.
And then I've got 3 lambs and 4 pigs that I have to send to the butcher. And I'm like, wow, that was an expensive day.
Right.
But I love the indoor one. And that's even fun to watch too. So
Absolutely.
Come down and support the 4-H kids.
Yeah.
Come down and see your vendors.
Absolutely.
Come down and talk to a candidate.
Come meet your candidates. Come see what else is going on in your community. Get involved locally.
Yeah. Come down to the fair.
Yeah.
It's a lost thing. I still love that. Travis Tritt was here last night. I went to the state fair in Great Falls in, I think it was 88 or 89. Travis Tritt was brand new. Travis Tritt, Garth Brooks, and maybe Dwight Yoakam at that time.
Oh, yeah. Sounds about right.
But I was like, I need to go to the Travis Tritt concert. I haven't been to a Travis Tritt concert in a lot of years.
I wanted to see the age demographic of that group. That would have been fun.
I think I must have been 16 or 17 at the time.
Sounds about right. Sounds about right.
It was a driving down. I remember because it was the first time my parents let us go with our buddies to drive to Great Falls on our own.
Ooh.
And we spent half the time driving the dirt roads, shooting gophers out the windows of the car.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is what it means to be a kid who grew up in Northwest Montana in the 80s and the 90s.
A lot of fun.
A lot of fun.
But all right, I appreciate your time. We're gonna let Rachel off the hook. What? Oh, yes. Do you like our set?
I do like your set.
Do you know that this was provided by one of the local vendors here in town?
That's awesome.
What's her name? Emily. That's what her name is. Emily. New Vision Thrift. I asked her if I could sell everything. She keeps telling me I can't. I think she said I could sell the stuff behind me.
That's some pretty fancy
But
stuff.
I'm pretty sure if I can get $5,000 for this table, she would probably take it.
Good stuff.
But thank you to New Vision Thrift in town for decorating our set.
Go support them as well.
Yes. Support your local vendors, support your local businesses,
Absolutely.
even your local bondsman.
All right.
I don't know that you can say that because in order to support your bondsman, you have to
Have to do some.
do some